Hello, everybody. Welcome to Quantum Witch Cafe, your safe place to talk about anything fringe, paranormal, bookish, anything taboo, anything you would not bring to, the conservative Thanksgiving dinner table. I'm not really sure. We talk about it all here. And tonight, I am very honored to have Dave Emmons on. He is an author, an experiencer, a veteran, but I'm going to let him tell you more about himself. But before we get to my guest, I want to say thank you for listening now, later, wherever you are. And please, hit the like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, because it helps get these guests out there into the world with their amazing books. Dave, I hope you're doing well tonight.
I am. I am.
Awesome. Awesome. Why don't you tell us who you are and why you are the way you are and what do you do?
I wouldn't want my wife to tell that, but I'll go ahead and tell him. No,
We'll get her on for like a scandal
yeah.
episode.
I started off by having my first encounter with a best friend of mine, a UFO sighting that was in '63, way back there. And then I went to high school, of course, and I went to the military. I was a Vietnam veteran. And after that, I played music for 45 years. I owned a restaurant. I've done a business management. My background in schooling is journalism, so that's what got me partly into this radio thing. So, and ever since then, I've been an experiencer off and on throughout my life. Like little supernatural or paranormal things would happen, like afterwards would just appear. And a dime appeared in my shower just 2 weeks ago. And I looked down at the shower tub floor and it wasn't there when I got in. Because I'm always looking at the mat, make sure the mat is okay. You don't want to go in there and slip. So I look at the mat, it wasn't there. And then about halfway through my shower, I looked down, there was a shiny dime right at my foot. And I said, that's weird. That's weird. Also, I want to mention something about the eclipse. I had a car engine light. This might be a little funny. Car engine light that was on for 2 days, and I was going to take it to the shop yesterday. I got in the car yesterday after the eclipse, and the light went off, and it hasn't come back on.
That's so funny.
That's weird. But I don't look at those things as being involved in what I'm experiencing. But it's just I thought it'd be a funny thing to talk about. But no, my experiences have been going on most all my life. It even goes into my family. I got a 96-year-old mother that I'm going to interview her. I talked to her just yesterday about interviewing her and getting a video on her because she's had some ET experiences in her house. And we talk about those things every once in a while. So it goes into the bloodline and in families. My brothers have seen UFOs. I've seen 6 UFOs up close. I've been abducted many times that I don't really know about. I just had a dream, kind of regressed dream this morning, and I need to write it in my ledger. I had a dream that I was talking to a couple. I couldn't see their faces. You never see their faces in these dreams for some reason. And then I got handed a baby. The baby had a big head. I mean, not like mine, round. Mine's big and round, but this I'm talking about, it kind of like cone, like a long, and it had thin red hair on it. And I looked down at the baby, and I was wondering, why do they want me to take this baby to see this other person or being, whatever? So I sat there and I had the baby in my arms, and I looked at the baby, and then my dream was over. So that could have been, and I've actually seen a couple of my kids, and I'll tell you that story here pretty soon when we get to that. But that's me in a nutshell. I do this kind of stuff. I work out, I write books, I do the podcast, and then I do guest appearances like I'm doing on your show. And I found out you're a book reviewer, so I said, okay, let's get that out there. So I also sent this page to my publisher to let them know that I'm doing this show tonight. Of course, they have a podcast themselves, and they're a big publisher, Hangar One Publishing. That's who published this UFO book that I've got, and they published the Supernatural Angel book also. So that's, and then my Senseless Wars book, and then the sci-fi book that I'm going to publish in about a week or two. So that'll be 4 books, and I want to get as much as I can get done before time runs out on me. I don't know when the Lord has that clock set. So first of all, yeah. And you're an experiencer, and it's great to be talking to an experiencer.
Yeah, I really try to it's hard for me to be around other experiencers because I keep trying to forget that I am. Mm-hmm. But for the past, probably until this past summer, I was like living, breathing, eating UFOs. You know, like
Yeah,
I really was like compelled to just get involved in it like the year of COVID and come out with my experiences.
right.
So it's just I care too much, and a lot of things aren't aligning in the public sector when it comes to transparency, and that really, really was depressing for me.
Yeah. It,
And I just needed to disassociate from it for a little bit because it was too close to home. It meant too much to me. And
mhm.
I felt like experiencers were not getting like the ground that they needed or the platform they needed to
No,
like
they
talk
don't.
about what's going on with them. We're so worried about the technology and this and that. And yes, that's very important. And it's obviously important if we've been having these meetings with them and so on and so forth. But the way Grush was treated kind of like felt like a stab in the back to myself and other experiencers.
Mhm.
I don't feel like they treated him the best way. So to me, that was kind of like the final straw that I was just like, ugh, like,
Yeah, half of the Pentagon doesn't want disclosure and the other half does. I think it goes deeper. I think there's a big cabal that runs the world banks, the rich elites. They're not wanting a disclosure because maybe they're utilizing some of that technology because they have the money to do that. Now I'm going to be followed. I've been followed before, so I've been stalked, and they do that just to harass you, to kind of, I guess, scare you off from the topics that you're covering. And I do cover a lot of UFO topics, and I talk to a lot of scientists, NASA scientists, and all this. So every time I have them on show, I get little, they mess with my computers. I don't care about talking about it. I've talked about it before. They probably listen in to most all people that talk about UFOs and secret things because they want to find out if you know something they don't. They know everything. These people, our government, our military, our secret agencies, they know everything. They're about 50, 60 years ahead of us. So they're probably traveling to Mars and traveling to the moon often. And so I've heard that story quite a bit. But my drive, Priscilla, is to educate or enlighten people on what's really going on. And the comments I just made, I think that's what's going on. The big to-do elites are holding back the disclosure for some reason. But that's another topic. But I'm not going to pay any attention to disclosure at this point because it is kind of nerve-wracking to wait for the government to do anything anymore. And it's really totally messed up. But I want to talk about, I guess, some of the highlights of the book. What do they want? And I do have a copy of that book right here and there. And it's what do they want? And I also wrote another book that kind of coincides with it. I've had a couple of experiences with angels and supernatural entities. And that was my third book. Second book, Senseless Wars, in which people don't want to know about wars. I want to talk about those two books really. But my first encounter that got me started was my first encounter actually was in 62. And I saw a ship that had light blue haze underneath of it. And I was sitting outside. I was only about 12 at the time. And I was sitting outside and all my other siblings were inside. It was about 8:30, getting a little dark. And I looked up and I saw this little thing look like a rectangular craft with 2 or 3 little lights in front of it. And underneath it was a blue haze. I don't remember anything after that. It just hit me all of a sudden. And I ended up in bed and my legs were numb. And of course, when we had 11 kids in a family, we kind of shared a bed. So I shared a bed with my older brother. And I felt like there's a presence next to me. And I turned around and my brother said, have you seen or heard anything? He goes, no, go back to sleep. And this presence left. And so my legs come back. I guess I was dumbed down or numbed down from the magnetic energy they hit you with. And that's how they knock you out. It's kind of like a sedative. But that was real quick. And I have a memory of it and I had it written down. And it was just kind of a quick, but the second one, a year later, this was the big one. My best friend and I, we were sitting on his porch and he lived in a downstairs apartment with his dad. And we were drinking Pepsi out of a glass bottle. So that dates me right there. We were listening to a 10 transistor radio. That also dates me. So we were sitting there talking and we smelled this odor first. smelled like sulfur. Now, some people, like we were talking, I talked to a guest the other night about Christianity and UFOs and ETs. Well, ETs are throughout the Bible. You take Ezekiel, you take Noah, you know, so you take all these books that they've been taken and disappeared. Even Muhammad, you know, he was taken, you know, from his ship, and he never come back. But you take the Bible and it's loaded with that ET history. But getting back to my story, is what we were listening to was the radio, and it started crackling. I asked my buddy, said, "Did you change the batteries?" He said, "Yes, I did." And then we looked up and we saw these little lights coming across the treetops. And we go, "Oh, you know, something's going on." So we went up, and he got a flashlight out of his dad's truck up on the road, and we walked parallel to this thing, and we walking with it. He was flashing the flashlight at it, and it was blinking lights, but he was a little confused when he told the story, and him and I have shared this story, and we talked about it, that he said that when he was blinking the light, it was blinking back at us. No, it wasn't. The lights were flickering in the tops of the treetops, where the leaves were kind of flickering with the light. That's where he was a little confused. I remember that in detail. We walked up to this empty lot and we looked at it. It was over my backyard. At that point, we walked up, and it was only about 3 houses up, and we walked up, and there's an empty lot. It's right over my backyard. It was about 35 feet in the air. It was really low. It looked like it was about 35 feet wide, maybe about 22 feet in depth. And it looked like one of these little roly-poly, chubby, you take a screw driving, it's a screw-driven top, a toy top that spins, and it had 3 layers. The first layer, second layer were windows, portals. Third layer was a little dome, and it looked like it had antennae sticking up at the top. And it had a little red light towards the back of that top. We stood there and looked at this thing, and we kept pinching each other and making sure that it wasn't a dream. And so he pinched me really hard, and I said, "Ow!" I remember that, and I said, "I wish my brother Jack was here." And I remember saying that to him. He said, "Yeah." He said, "He's really missing this." And we just kept staring at this thing, and we don't know the time. We don't know what time it was. We know it was around 10 o'clock or after, maybe 10:15. And we usually go home at 11. I usually go home at 11. My mom expects me to probably come home at 11. But what happened that night was, all of a sudden we were standing there, and we didn't know the time, and it was gone. The craft was gone, and he told me, "So I'm gonna go and tell my dad I saw a flying saucer." And I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna go tell my mom." So we split up, and we went there, and his dad said, "Oh yeah, son, you saw a flying saucer. That's all. That's good. That's good. Go to bed." And I went home. My mom had the door all bolted up, and I was pounding on the door, and she says, "Where have you been? Don't you know what time it was? How many time it is at that time?" And I said, I said, "No." And I wish you would have told me. That would have been a secret of how long we were gone, and how long it took. Maybe we were abducted. But I found out 2 weeks later that we were abducted during that time, and we didn't know it. I had in my left testicle, I had a red line cut. It was a red laser line about 1 inch long, and I felt something underneath of it, and it was kind of like a Advil tablet. It was kind of like an M&M, a small M&M. I pushed it out, that red cut line. I had enough sense to know that's how it got in there, and I pushed it out. And mind you, I was only 14 at the time, and I pushed it out, and I got it in my hand. It was ash color, light, and it started turning dark as the oxygen hit it. And I took it to my mom. I showed her. I said, "Mom, look what I got out of my." And I said other words, but she said, "That's just an ingrown hair." I said, "No, it's not, Mom." She goes, "What are you saying?" I said, "There was a red line cut, and I pushed it out of that red line, and there was no blood." She froze. She looked at me, because her family has seen UFOs. So she didn't want to scare me. So she said, "Throw it away anyway." Well, back then we didn't know anything about implants. We didn't know that you should keep them, take pictures. I didn't even have a camera to even take a picture. We were a blue collar family, and we didn't have those luxuries. Maybe some rich kids did, but we didn't. I would have taken pictures, but I didn't take any pictures. I threw it away. But months later, now this is what happens in regress dreams. A lot of people say things happen to them, but wait for a while and you'll have regress dreams that'll come in.
Yeah.
And like I did last night, I had a regress dream about having a small child in my lap, and it had a large cone-like head with real sparse red hair. And that dream was just last night. And I got the child from somebody else that gave it to me. I didn't know what they wanted me to do. I thought I was supposed to talk to this next person, but they wanted to see the kid. And so I had the kid on my lap, and I looked at this person. I didn't see any faces, but I saw the child's face. He looked like a regular baby, and he was light complected, but he had red sparse hair. Now that was just last night. Now this ties into a lot of different other things, but about a few months or maybe even a couple of years later, I had a regress dream that I was on board a ship, and it was dark inside. I was sitting on a metal table, and I was real drowsy. I was woozy, like I was drunk or something. And then I knew my buddy was in there from the first UFO that him and I saw together. We had lost time. We didn't know how much time. Well, I felt that he was in the room with me, but I couldn't see him. And then I tried to put the shirt on, and the shirt I couldn't. It was too small. It was too tight, and I couldn't put it on. And I kind of give up. And it was his shirt. He was smaller than me. I was always a little chubby guy. And so he was smaller than me. So it was his shirt. They had our shirts mixed up. And then finally, I guess they got him straight. And that's when they put us back down on the ground on that one empty lot. And we didn't see it leave at that point. But when I had a regress dream, I knew I saw it leave. We were looking at it in the southwest. I went back and I made some drawings. This is kind of like journalistic note taking. And I took some drawings of the area and where we saw the craft. We was looking in the southwest at it, but it flew directly west when it took off. I mean, it went real fast. It was gone in the clouds in just seconds. It was gone. And I thought, wow, that was fast. But it must have moved about 30 degrees the last time we saw it, because it moved due west from southwest, 30, 40 degrees. And so we didn't see it move. So apparently it dropped us off at that point when it moved a little bit, and it dropped us off and it took off. So that regress dream, I told my buddy about it, and he hasn't had a regress dream on that sighting. And my brother keeps asking him, we were all friends, and so he keeps asking him, said, do you have any dreams or anything? He said, no. Some people have regressed recall and some don't. Why? I don't know. I don't know.
That's actually my before I was like, forget it, I'm just gonna write about vampires.
Yeah.
I was preparing and outlined a book about dream experiences, everything from Hat Man to angels to UFO to alien, demon, all of it. Right. And the first section was going to be like the science of it. And I actually did a little presentation on dream experiences, because that's kind of like, I don't know, it's like people are not taking it seriously enough. They're saying like, oh, well, it's all your memory, it's all this and that and this and that. But there's people that are having these dream experiences with physical symptoms, implants. Like I've woken up with like something had bound me with bruises. Now, if my brain can, I know our brain's amazing, right? But it's not going to give you an implant. Right. You're not going to manifest an implant in yourself. You're not going to manifest several times of like restraints around your wrists or wherever. So, or like when people wake up with the like the scoop marks and all, your brain isn't going to do that, So to me, people's dream recall needs to be taken more seriously. But then I got distracted with vampires, so it's just on the back burner.
Yeah, it's the cerebral thing that actually people think, okay, that was just a dream. But how do we really know? You can't just debunk somebody because they said they had this terrible dream, or they had a real lucid dream to where they saw these creatures, these ETs and things. They can control our minds also. They know how to go in our minds. They can rewrite our history in our minds. They can bring in new stories. They hide it in your subconscious, and then someday, maybe a couple of years later, it comes out, and you see it in a very lucid regressed dream like the one I had this morning. I think before a lot of people should be judging, I think they're actually thinking, okay, now there's UFOs in the sky, but they don't think they're here on the ground. Well, people, they're walking amongst us. Dr. David Jacobs said they are walking amongst us.
Also, and we forget that the linearity of our own time is only because of our space in the universe and our physicality on this planet with its size, how it's rotating. None of this pertains to extra dimensional creatures or spirit world or just like multi-dimensional ultra-terrestrial situations.
Right.
We are so cocky to think that this is how we experience time and physics, and that's it.
No.
We're not the only plane of existence, and the many worlds theory talks about that.
Right, and the many parallel universes that we have, and there is no end to time from how we measure it. But you take a look at, a lot of scientists are saying we could be living in a matrix. Well, let me get to the three types of abductions. A lot of people ask, have you think I've been abducted? I get that question.
Before we get into that, because that's very important, I want to say hi to everybody in the chat. Hi, Carol. Hi, Sylvain. Carol and Sylvain are always here supporting the channel. Carl, so nice to have you. Johnny came from Nathaniel Gillis's. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to talk to Nathaniel yet. If you haven't, he's a very interesting person. Like, I could talk to him forever. So Nathaniel, if you're ever listening to this, we need another show. And then Johnny, you have a lot of cool stuff to say. Thank you for joining and subscribing. I appreciate you. Okay, so what you were going to talk about is three different types of.
Yeah, because I have a lot of people who write me and ask me, how do I know that I've been abducted?
All right,
well,
let's hear it.
Well, there's quite obvious. There's three ways. There's one way, I call it bedside abduction. I had this in '95. There was a little gray creature that walked around in my room. It was dark, and my ex-wife liked it dark in there. And I thought it was my daughter coming into the master bedroom to get aspirins or something for a headache. And I called out her name several times. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I had my chin in my palm of my hand looking up. And I tried to talk to her, and it wasn't her at all. And then I saw this dark figure come around my bed. And this was about a 3.5 foot tall, dark gray looking creature, had big eyes, but he didn't have the black lenses on. He had big eyes like us. You can see the whites of his pupils. And he had just a small little dimple of a nose with holes. And he had just a little bitty mouth, as they say. But he didn't look like the commercial little gray that this guy was ugly. He was wrinkled. He looked, like a prune. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I had fear for about 5-6 seconds. And then I was out. I passed out. What happened was that he took DNA samples from me. He took a frequency sample. He took some brainwave memory samples. And this is what they get from you. They do a full physical of you there, like that. And then they take semen samples. And they take eggs from women. But most of the time, and I talk to a lot of abductees, that women are taken aboard ship. Now, that's the second form of abduction. They actually take your body and they take you aboard ship. And they do procedures there. And mostly, I think women end up, because their procedure of getting eggs from you is a little bit more complicated than what, drawing semen from a tube. And I've seen the tube in between my legs 2 or 3 different times, and it's a little brown tube. And every time I try to kick it away, they'll knock you out. They just knock you out. If you give them any fuss at all, you're knocked out totally. So that's happened to me. So that's the bedside way they do it. And I woke up, I guess about an hour later, and my eyes were twitching, and I couldn't stop them from twitching. And that was the energy that I was hit with. And I went to the bathroom and splashed my face with cold water. They wouldn't stop. And I asked my wife, I said, did you see or hear anything? She goes, no. Well, one day after, when you're the target, the person that you're with, your husband, your wife, or whatever, they're knocked out. They don't know anything. They're out. They don't want any, the ETs don't want any hassle or trouble. That's why they dumb you down. That's why they knock you out with this magnetic energy. And I've been hit by it several times. But I imagine that's what happened to me that night. It was a bedside. Now there's another type that I was taken, and this one was huge and scary. It was in 2011, And I got tired. I was at the computer. It was about 1:30 in the afternoon. The sun was bright, and it was early summer. I I got really tired, and I said, "Wow, I went and laid down to rest my back. I got a bad back, so I went and rested my back, but I didn't fall asleep. I had my chin in my hand, and I was looking out the door, and all of a sudden I heard this crackling, loud, real loud crackling sounded behind me. I tried to turn and look at it, and it hit me in the shoulder. And when it did, I couldn't move. I couldn't move my legs, my arms, and I tried to move around again, and it hit me again. Then I was totally immobilized. It was kind of like you've heard of this thing, the old lady that gets on the chest. They call that sleep paralysis. Well, I've had sleep paralysis before. This was not sleep paralysis because I felt and I heard the noise, and I heard my sister. She was hollering from the hallway at me. She said, "Come on, Dave, you can do it. Come on, Dave." And I said, "What? Do what, sissy?" And that's what I called her, sissy. She said, "You can do it." I said, "Come to the door where I can see you. I can't move." And she says, "No, I can't." And not the funny part, but the weird part about that, she was dead 4 years before that happened. I heard her voice. She come through the portal with these ETs, and she was able to communicate with me through the portal that they were in. Well, then I felt the little baby's hand in my fingers. They let me move my fingers. They dropped the baby's hand in my fingers, and I felt it. I felt the palm, and I felt the fingers. They were very soft. And I said, "That's a baby." And then I felt something heavy set beside me. Then that's when I had enough. I was so scared after that. I said, "God help me," and I said it twice. And after the second time, it was gone. And they claim,
Interesting.
yeah, if they claim you say, "God help me," they'll leave you alone because uh, you know, you do have a free will. You can do what you want, and you can tell these ETs they can't mess with your soul or your spirit. They cannot do that. Yeah. But
Interesting.
that was a big one, and I had a couple of those electrified events happen again. About a week later, I was electrified, and I thought I pushed it away. I had a chance to meet Dr. David Jacobs at a convention, and I told him the story. He kind of chuckled, and I said, "Oh, you don't believe me?" He said, "Oh, no." He said, "No." He said, "You weren't going." He said, "They're bringing you back." He said, "When you feel that electricity, they're bringing you back." I said, "Oh, wow, I didn't think of it that way." So
Yeah.
we can get it reversed. We don't know if we're coming or going with these ETs.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I found like it feels like an electrical current. Like they'll do a little bit, and then if you try to resist it, it's like more. They like
Yeah.
up it each time,
Right.
and then you're
Right.
just like gone. Like if you try to fight it, they're just like zap, zap, zap. It feels like Johnny says that he had a dream with a ghost woman, and he doesn't have any children, so that's very interesting.
With the
At
ghost.
least they made them pretty. At least it was pretty. But a lot of they can alter your perception. So a lot of times, and you've probably heard Nathaniel talk about this, it will shift into your ideal mate or your ideal person
Yes.
to get complacency from you. Also to not scare you, because I've had one in its like own form, and then I got scared, and then it turned into like something else, like a person to
They
try to not
screen.
scare.
Yeah. ETs screen themselves. They can
Yeah.
shapeshift, show you anything you want. And that was the first type is the bedside abduction. And then the course taking you to the ship. I had a very lucid dream. I'll just tell you this one. I've had several that I've written down in my book, but this is the big one. I all of a sudden I was on board this ship. I was standing in the hallway. It was a long hallway in this ship. I looked around, and all I could see was really bright, shiny metal walls, and the floor was just a little rough, like a little brown carpet thin. And I looked down and I could see where I was walking, and I walked down this hallway, and I looked, and there was rooms, actual rooms, and there I see entities in there, but I couldn't see their faces. Again, that's a dimensional thing. You don't see faces sometimes, but I don't know why. I'll continue on here. But when I went down to the end of the hallway, it opened up into this big like convention room, and there was three podiums. On these podiums were tall, white looking individuals, and they had no hair, but they were tall, about 7 feet, 8 feet tall, and they had animals along with them. Like one looked like a monkey and a kangaroo mix. The first one I could see. The others I couldn't see because it's a little further away. And I thought, okay, this is Noah's Ark. This is kind of like where they make life, they DNA, and they manipulate DNA and they make creatures to take to different planets. And I thought that's what this ship was, a Noah's Ark ship. I turned around and I looked down at my right foot and I saw a black box, and it was following my right foot. As I walked, it kept following me. It just rolled along with me. And I wondered, what the heck is that? I was told later on by some people that they store your soul and your spiritual content in that box and because they got to safeguard it, because they can't damage or take ownership of your soul. And that's why a lot of times you can't sell your soul, really. You really get down to it. I walked down the hallway back and I saw these ladies in white robes. They were ladies. They looked like nurses. And one turned to me and she looked human. I saw most of the face. And then I looked in between what they were looking at. There was a baby there, a human baby, about 6 months old. It had 3 eyes. The 3 eyes went straight across its head. I said, whoa. And then they looked at me and I backed off. And I was kind of talking to myself because they weren't listening to me. And then I turned and I saw this really tall woman coming down the hall towards me. And she wasn't ugly, as we were talking a while ago. She was a beautiful woman. She didn't have no hair. She had earrings on. She had big eyes, dark eyes, and she looked human in the face. She was pale. She had a 2-piece on, like a tan piece that come down to her navel, and then another piece that was like a mini skirt type thing that she was wearing. And she was approaching me. I wasn't scared, like I said. She didn't look like, she was ugly or monstrous looking. So she come up to me and looked at me, and telepathically she was telling me to walk over to the wall with her. So I walked over to the wall with her. She touched these panels. There's no knobs, no dials. That's old hat. She just touched a protrusion that was coming out of the wall, a metallic looking wall, and they were round protrusions. She touched it and she disappeared. And I said, wow. And I looked up at her, how'd you do that? Her lips just grimaced a little bit. She did not say nothing, but she was telepathically talking to me. And I thought, okay, I'm too stupid to talk to, so let's just go on with it. Then she told me to follow her. So there was a hallway. It was about 9 feet tall and about 5 feet wide, and it was kind of dark. And she told me, she walked first. And as she walked into that hallway, she disappeared, and then I followed her. And when I followed her, I disappeared, and then I showed up back in my bed. And I woke up real quick and I said, wow, what an experience that was. And I thought maybe I better write it down. I said, no, I'm going to remember that very, very closely. I won't forget that at all. So that's one of the biggest lucid dreams I've had. And I've seen the creature, the woman, E.T., a tall white, I guess you'd call him.
Wow.
Yeah.
A question. When they communicate telepathically, do you hear a voice or just a message of knowing?
A message of knowing. You don't hear a voice. It's some kind of a control item. I've been talked to telepathically by several, and you don't hear words. There's no words. You know what they want you to do. They control your thinking. Yeah. And it's an automatic thinking process. They take over your brain telepathically and just lead you what they want you to do. And that's why a lot of times, if you're dumbed down, the only thing you can do is look. You can't move, you can't talk, and I've been there too. But the other big story. Now the third wave. Let's get to the third wave, being taken on ship, and I was taken on ship several times. And I was actually taken on the ship. This may sound a little crude, but it was true. I ended up in this room. It seemed like the same type of ship. It had the same kind of like metallic, shiny walls, and it was like a laboratory, and it had like windows, big, thick plated windows. And there was this guy in there. He was humanoid, and the only thing I saw, on the lady that I saw also on the ship, I saw her arm. And I saw her arm, and she had little hairs on her arm. Why I was able to see her arm, I think what they were doing was letting me know they're humanoid, and she had little fine hairs on her arm. And this guy that I saw in this other lucid dream I had, I was in this laboratory, and I think I got some of the dates written down in my book, but they're not really, like I said, you can have an event happen, and then a year or 2 years later you have a regressed dream, so you can't really time it. You don't know when the abduction occurred and when that incident occurred. And but I was in this room, and he was telling me, and I saw his arm. He had blue spots on his arm. He looked like he was a hybrid, maybe human blue alien hybrid, because he had blue spots on his arm. And he motioned for me. He didn't talk to me. He was telepathically telling me there was a white blanket on the floor. In that blanket was a long-haired, dark, long-haired female. I can tell it was female. I saw the side of her face. I didn't see her face, but I saw her hair. Motioned for me to get in bed with her. And yes, there was some mating going on, and then I got up, and then he showed me the panel, just like this other lady ET showed me a panel, and he told me to walk down the hall. This time it was by myself. He didn't come with me. And he put his hand on the panel, and I went down the hall, and I was gone, and I ended up back in my bed. Now, that's another way, I guess they do. If you're a man and you're on board a ship, that's another way that you spread your semen or whatever, or they make a baby, a hybrid out of this. That's the way they do it.
It's not uncommon for it to go the other way around as well. Females having forced proximity experiences with male,
Right.
teas.
Yeah. The third way, Priscilla, is something that I think has really stumped a few investigators that I've talked to. This happened to me 6 years in a row, starting in 2017, and it went to about 2022, somewhere in there. And it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's always between August 11th and August 13th, starting 2017. I wake up and my body is in a position like I'm in the casket. My arms are crossed. I never sleep like that. And I don't sleep on my back either. I sleep on my side usually because of my bad back. So I was freezing. I was shaking the whole bed. My arms are so cold. I felt my arms and I thought I was dead. And I couldn't talk. I couldn't say anything. I wasn't even thinking anything. My wife was laying next to me on the bed, and she normally hears a cell phone when it falls on the carpet. She'll wake up. She'll, what's that? What was that? Because she knows that we've been visited. And then sometimes she'll tell me she hears the noise, or she said, your buddies are here. So she really realizes that we've been married 11 years. So she's learned that from me over the years. But I was freezing and shaking the bed so hard that the bed was making a lot of racket and noise, and she didn't wake up. I went to the bathroom. I had to go and take a leak, because when you're really cold, it seemed like you got to take a leak. So I go in, take a leak, come back in, put the blankets on me, and I'm shivering, I'm cold, and I pass out because I'm so exhausted. And for the likes of me, I don't remember anything. Nothing was in my mind. It was just an event that, that it took 2 years or 3 years for me to really bring it up to my doctor. Because after the third year it happened, it all happened between August 11th and August 13th, and it's always hot here in Illinois. And the air conditioner was set on 72, so it wasn't cold. I had blankets on even, so I didn't have a reason to really be cold. Well, I finally mentioned it to my doctor a couple of years ago, and she's probably one of the best doctors I think I've ever had. She's no longer practicing medicine. She's management now, so, well, she does practice medicine, but she was a great doctor. I told her that story, but this time when I told her it happened, it was actually after the 6th time I talked to her again. I mentioned it to her before, but after the 6th time I mentioned it to her. And she said, it happens on the same date. I said, yes, once a year on about the same date, August 11th through 13th. She said, that's incredible. She looked at my charts. She said, there's nothing. She said, you have no sugar diabetes. You have no blood problem. I said, no. She said, I don't know. She said, and then she looked scared. She had an assistant or a trainee that she was training. And this assistant looked at me, and their eyes got real big. And she said, David, I don't know what to tell you. She said, that is strange. She said, but you have no medical condition that would do that. So what they did, that's the third form, I think, of abduction. They take your soul, your essence, your memory, your consciousness, and they just leave you enough energy for your body to survive. And they take that across into another dimension. You go on a dimensional travel. I have never had any regress dreams from any of that. So they must have completely blocked me out from those 6 times that they've taken me. through a dimensional travel. And that's the third way of abduction, if people's ever had that happen to them. They claim that ghosts can suck all the energy out of you. You wrote vampire books, Priscilla, and they can suck the energy out of you. All your electrons are gone. They remove them for energy, and that makes your body cold. Yes.
So like psychic vampire type stuff.
Yeah.
Like they do it though. Yeah, they do it differently. There's like ethical psychic vampires, but a lot of these entities, and the first person that has sort of agreed with me on this is Nathaniel Gillis, saying that they don't always play by our rules of religion and free will, and so some of them don't. And most people, I guess, don't have that experience. I've had the experience of them kind of violating, despite praying, despite all this stuff. So it's interesting how so many different types of experiences are possible for people.
Yes.
But they all fall under those three main types. So
right. I would say those three types, but there's also, like I said, there's a cerebral type where they come and invade your brain. Like I was uploaded and downloaded several times. One time that I knew of, and that was my fifth UFO that I saw. It looked like a TikTok. Like they said, it was bright. It was following me along the highway. It kept my pace. It was over in a wooded line. And I said, oh, no, what's this? Again, I'm seeing something else. And then I got weak. I got really weak. It was like magnetic energy. I felt it before. And I pulled over off the side of the road because I couldn't drive very good. I was really like being dumbed down. This craft must have come over me. I couldn't see it because I didn't have window in my roof. So this craft must have uploaded from me and downloaded something, and then it just took off. Mentally, they can do that. They can upload, download anywhere you're at. So maybe that's a fourth way. They take your consciousness and your memories and they upload them. And they know who you are. They can put it in their instruments and they say, okay, this is what this guy did today, or this is what he did 10 years ago, or this is how he was educated. And they find all that out. They find out how us humans are developing and how we're doing. That's how they do it. That's probably a fourth way of abduction, just the mental, uploading and downloading of you, just like we do in computers. Similar, except they do it, a whole different way, about a million years ahead of us. I guess I want to tell this story. This story is one of the big ones in the book, and it took up several pages. So I want to tell this one, Priscilla, before we run short on time. I was told by a medium, a spiritual medium, and it was in Springfield, Illinois, and this was back in 2010. And I told her, this friend of mine who writes ghost books, he's a Larry. He's a great friend. He's a great guy, and we got to know each other going to these conventions. And he writes ghost books, so we're both writers. And he told me to go to this lady. He said she's fantastic. So I go to her. She was part Native American Indian, and she had a shop that had Native American Indian things in it. And she lived up on this little hill on a little road that wound up to the hill, and there was a little pond. And when I crossed that pond, I imagined 200 dragonflies flew over my car. I thought, I had chills going up my spine. I said, this is a sign. This is a synchronicity. I drove up. I walked in her door, and I said, I'm your 2:00 appointment. And she said, okay. She says, sit down. And I said, well, I don't like psychics too much. And she goes, I'm not a psychic. She come on point. She got mad. She said, my spiritual guides tell me what to do. So she told me 5 things, to make a long story short. She told me 5 things. And the most incredible thing she told me was, she said, you're going on a trip. I said, yes. How'd you know that? She said, soon, right? I said, yeah, in 9 days. And I said, how'd you know that? And I said, Larry didn't. She said, no, I haven't talked to Larry. And she said, you're going to take a trip. And I said, yes. She said, you're going to have damage to your car, but you're going to be able to make it to New Mexico to see your friends. I said, damage? I said, I'm not going to be hurt or anything. She goes, no, your car is going to be damaged. You'll be able to drive it. You'll be able to finish your trip and come home. And then she said, you're going to meet your first ET face to face. I said, I've already met an ET. I said, face to face. And so her name was Cheryl. And she said, well, you're going to meet one. This is going to be a real meeting. She says that you're going to see this person and be with this person. I said, okay. And then she told me that I had a bad back. And then she went on and told me there was a blonde lady that's looking for me. And I think I had that blonde lady show up a few times. And I think this is what you call human aliens on Earth here. So I won't get into that story, but I will tell you the one that it was a reptilian. But this one here, I will finish this story. So when I went to Sedona, I traveled there, drove 23 straight hours, went there, and I got in the room and I rested for a couple hours. And then I got up and I had a lot of energy, and I took off and went to eat something. And I went to this shop, this big jewelry shop. And they told me that they saw a UFO at Cathedral Rock. I said, okay, I know where that's at. I've been there before. I said, I'll go there. So I went up there and I started filming. Well, in pulls in behind me. Now, this was cool and a little rainy. And when it's rainy in Sedona, it's not so pretty. So I was taking my Sony camera and I was filming the rock. And here she pulls up behind me. She gets out. She's about 5'4", 5'5". She was Japanese, Asian. She looked like she was 35, 34, 35. And then she walks up to me, and I looked around at her, and I filmed her just a little bit. And I asked her, I said, what's your name? She says, Hiroko. And I said, were you waiting for somebody to take a hike? She goes, no. I said, are you going to take a hike? It looks like it's going to rain. I wouldn't advise it. She goes, no. She said, I'm here to see you. I said, what? She said, I'm here to see you. And then she said, we were supposed to meet. I'm not going to tell you what those words mean, but they have more meaning in what I'm doing at present. But, and then I said, well, it's raining. You want to get in the car and talk? And she goes, sure. She got in the car. I said, you're not afraid of me, right? Big old brute like me. And she goes, no. I said, you can kick my butt? She goes, yes. I said, oh, wow. She had nothing on. She had a little thin sweater. She had denims on. She had a mud splatter on her denims from hiking up to the Cathedral Rock the night before. And probably meeting her UFO people up there. But she sat there and we started talking, and she kept eliciting, I guess, emotions from me. She asked me, what would you do if you had a coworker that you couldn't get along with and you were arguing with them all the time? I said, well, I'd just probably tell them we'd have to quit arguing because you both could lose your jobs. Your boss could fire you, for fighting and arguing. And then a car pulled up beside me. And this was a guy that was in a white car. He did not look at me. He was a young guy in his late 20s, close cropped hair. He had a headset on, like he was listening. And this was, I'm going to come out and say it, NSA right out, straight up, because they were following her. They were wondering what she was telling me. She didn't really tell me anything. I didn't get anything from her, except that she said that she was from Tokyo, and she said that her mom and dad treated her mean. And she said she had to have a baby. And I said, had to have a baby? I said, why? I said, you're not married or anything. Why do you got to have a baby? She goes, I do. I said, tell me again, why were you supposed to meet me? I asked her. She said, we were supposed to meet. And she said, I'm glad I met you. And then this car pulled in and pulled back in again with this guy that looked like an agent. I had a license to carry a gun. I had a gun in my console. And I looked at my console and she looked at me. She had dark, piercing eyes. And I said to myself, she doesn't want me to touch that gun. She doesn't want me to do anything irrational. And like she was telling me with her eyes, telepathically, telling me, controlling me in a way, don't do nothing, just observe and just keep talking this conversation. So I did. I talked to her and I asked her, I said, how old are you? That brought her on point. She looked at me and this is how she blew it. The red flag popped up. She said, you humans think of age, of time. There is no time. There is no age. I looked at her and I said, we humans? And she just stopped like she made a mistake. Wow, that was a Freudian slip. And then I touched her hand because she started crying about her parents. And her hand was really hot. It was above fever pitch. And I told her, I said, Hiroko, are you okay? I said, you're really hot. It's cool outside. And I said, you just have a little thin sweater and a little tank top on. I said, she had no jewelry, no makeup, no cell phone, nothing like a woman would usually have, or a purse. She didn't even have a purse. And I thought to myself, this is strange. So I took mental notes as we were talking. She could not read English. She said she can speak 20 languages, but she couldn't read English. She had me read something from a little card. And I guess the symbols she understood, but she didn't understand, but she can talk English very well. And she went to Sandia, and then she said she went to White Sands in New Mexico. I said, why did a single woman like you want to go to White Sands in New Mexico? And she says, I just wanted to see the sand. And I thought to myself, that's not a good enough answer. There's something wrong here. So I told her, I said, okay, let's split up. I'll go back to my lodge. I said, how about breakfast in the morning? I said, we'll meet somewhere for breakfast. She goes, okay. She goes back to where she was staying. I went back there staying, and at 9:30 was supposed to meet. She was a little late, but telepathically, I was told she was coming. So she made it to the restaurant on, about 15 minutes late. We went in and had breakfast. We were standing there waiting, actually, before we went in for breakfast. And there was some people in there, about 12 people, and there was a gift shop there. She says, all these people. And I was paying attention to every word she was saying because she was strange, and I knew there was something ET about her. She said, all these people. And I thought, if she was from Tokyo, Japan, there's 1,000 people per block up there walking on the sidewalks, and all these people. And we went in and ate, and she didn't eat very much. I ordered for her. She didn't know what to order. She ate just very little, and I ate my breakfast, and we got up, and then she had to go to the restroom. I think what she did, she regurgitated what she ate because that's not her diet. So she had to go and get rid of it. So we went driving around the buttes and everything, and we looked at things, and then she told me, she says, I like you. We were supposed to meet. I said, would you quit saying that? I said, tell me who you are. Really, you are. I said, you know who I am? I told you. I said, who are you? She wouldn't really tell me everything. So we went up on top of this airport lookout, and there was a guy, an older guy, he's a Japanese guy. He had camera equipment all over him. He walked past us real slow, and he looked at me, and he was the caretaker. Now, from what like Daryl Sims told me, he said that they come in three. They have a protector that could have been the NSA guy. They have a human, I guess, companion who helps them through things, and that's who that older Japanese guy was. And they had the alien. So they come in those three. So it made sense. So when we left, I took some pictures of her. I got 9 pictures. Matter of fact, there is a picture of her in my book. And I took 9 pictures of her, and she wanted those 9 pictures. She said, would you send me those? And I said, how am I going to get them to you? I said, you live on Mars or something? And she just looked at me with those black eyes just staring at me. She goes, no. And she gave me an email address. And I got the email address, and I give her my card with email address and a phone number, but I didn't give her my address. Now she didn't know where I lived. And so I said, I'll send them to you. So what I did is I sent them to her slowly, but then I kept asking her questions in the email. But it looked like to me 3 different people were writing back. There was 3 different types of writing that wrote me back. So she was being handled by somebody, or our group of people, and she was an ET. So she couldn't write. But she told me that her and her boyfriend were fighting, and she's not going to be able to have a baby or whatever. And then she said, I did a prayer for her, and she said, your God don't help. He doesn't help. And so you're God. So that's another thing too. But here's the kicker. This is how I know she's for real. 5 months later, March 17th, 2011, her and 2 boys showed up at my house. My cousin and I were sitting on my front porch smoking cigars, and I don't do that no more. We were smoking cigars, and we saw these 3. All of a sudden, they showed up there at the roadside by a stop sign. And my cousin said, do you know those Chinese? I said, no, they're not Chinese, they're Japanese. So they started walking our way. And the woman, who had the same white top, sweater, denims, she turned around so I couldn't see her face. And then the 2 young boys walked up to us. They come up my driveway, and they stood about 10 feet from us. One looked like he's about 14, the other one 15 or 16. They're a little age difference there. And the tall one, that was older, asked me one question. He said, where's the new Walmart? And I told him, I said, it's right over that overpass. And that was it. I couldn't talk no more. I wanted to ask him if that was Hiroko. It was standing down the road with her back towards us. and I couldn't, and my cousin couldn't talk, and he talks so much he gets rude, and so he couldn't talk. His eyes were glazed over. I looked at him. I could see, but I could not talk. They had us dumbed down. They had us both dumbed down with that energy, and whatever they had in their pocket, they turned it on and dumbed us down with magnetic energy. And you can't talk. All you can do is observe. Well, they turned around after a while, but this one went in my house twice, right by the door, my right shoulder, and he carried out this pleather case, and I call it pleather because that's what it was. It was a vinyl case that kept my records from water, and some of those records had his mother. Yes, I'm saying that Hiroko was their mother, and that these boys were part of me. They had my DNA in them. They were hybrid for me. That's why they come to visit me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was told that by a couple of people that were very keen on this topic. But they've turned and walked away, and I didn't come to my senses until they got to my road in front of my house, and my cousin was still out. He was out about 5-10 seconds longer than me. They walked up and met Hiroko, and they walked, and then he woke up and he looked. He said, "Where are they at?" I said, "Right there walking. Let's watch them." He said, "Dave," he said, "I'm going to warn you." He said, "You're messing with ETs." Now, this is a guy that doesn't believe in ETs. Right off the top of his head, he said they were ETs. I said, "What makes you say that?" I said, "They were ETs." I said, "How'd you know it?" He said, "For what they just did to us, they dumped us down and we couldn't talk. And
Yeah.
now they're going up there." And we watched them, and they stood at the stop sign again. They disappeared. They didn't go up or down the road because we could see the road up and down. So that was the most mysterious thing. And that's why I said she's an ET. She come back 5 months later and proved it. And I have 2 hybrid sons. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely something. Yeah, that's an interesting sequence of events, and definitely they are tampering with your life and doing some sort of hybridization thing with you.
Right. And ever since then, I've had trouble with my computers. They cracked my computers a couple of times, and I had a professional hacker tell me that it was a government job or something, that they turned my screen blue, took all my information. And so this was after I met her. So they were following her, and then they followed me after.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you have plenty more experiences in your book, right?
Oh, yes. I got a whole book, and I also got a ledger full of other experiences. My life has been full. And my mom, she's got some amazing stories too.
Yeah, you definitely got to interview her.
Yeah. But no, that's why I wrote the angel book too, because I saw 2 angels at my bedside in 1971 after I come back from the war. And they usually appear when your mind is kind of tormented, you go through bad time. And I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, the bewitching hour, and I saw this figure. It was all in robe, white robe with a veil over its face. I knew it was a lady or a woman. And it appeared that way. And it just stood there and looked at me. And I looked at it for about 5 seconds, 7 seconds. And then it turned real slow and walked away. And it walked into my mom's room because I was staying at my mom and dad's house after I come back from Vietnam, just for a little while until I got my room, my apartment. And then I asked my mom, "Did you see anything?" She goes, "No, I didn't." I said, "Well, this angel, whatever it was, walked into your room." And then in 98, after my divorce, I saw the angel come back again. It was in 98, but it was at the foot of the bed, just like the first one was. It looked exactly like this first one I saw in 71. So 20-something years later, this angel comes back, all in a white robe with a veil. And then I watched it. I wasn't afraid because I had this incident before, and it walked into my bathroom, and I followed it. It was gone. So that's why I wrote the angel book, and my family have seen angels too. So
yeah, they're all tied somehow. You see one, you see them all. It like opens up some sort of, like the third eye, or your psychic vision, or your clairvoyancy, whatever people call it. People call it many different things, but if you have one experience, you can bet you're going to have another one. It's not always ET. Sometimes it's only angels. Sometimes it's only ghosts. But you will have, it's very rare. I mean, maybe I just meet the people that have a ton of them because they know they can talk to me about it.
Yeah,
But it's very rare that somebody only has one experience.
that's
And
true.
that's it.
I've had
So,
three implants also. I dug one out of my leg, and I got pictures of it. So yeah,
interesting.
but I got one in my hand, and the X-ray
Mhm.
shows it. I won't let the regular doctors cut it out, because if they do, if it is something odd, they won't let me have it. They'll keep it.
Oh,
They,
okay. Yeah.
they call that bio waste, and they won't let you have
Yeah. Well,
it.
some people like to keep their implants because
Yeah,
they don't mind the contact. So,
right.
um, yeah, that's interesting. That's definitely we would definitely need another whole hour just to talk about implants. So, yeah, because there's this, the phenomena is multifaceted
Hmm.
and it includes everything you talked about and then some. So that's
Right,
why you're writing all these books about these different types of entities, because
right.
it's not just one thing.
No.
So we are up on the hour. Is there
Okay.
anything that you wanted to talk about that you didn't get a chance to mention?
I saw a huge triangle craft back in 2011, April 9th. Remember that? And my mom and my brothers were visiting my mom down the street. She lived about 4 or 5 houses down from me. I bought a house at the end of the street there. And this huge craft come over my house that had two bright lights on the back ends, the triangle. And then in the front, it had two big glass globes. Nobody's ever said that, but they're glass globes about 15 feet long, about 5 or 6 feet wide, and there was two of them back to back on the front nose of this craft.
Okay.
It made a hissing sound from a large, looked like a barbecue grill with slats, and it hissed a little bit. It didn't make much sound. It was only about 35 feet off the ground. It actually clipped the tree across where my neighbor lived across the street, and it went right over me, the center of it. I said, "Oh my God!" It was just huge. And I asked my mom and brothers, but they saw it. They said, my mom said, "See it? Oh my God!" Said, "I was afraid to step out on the porch because I'd be abducted." So there's the
Yeah.
lady that's got some experience, and she was
Oh, for
afraid of
sure.
that. Yeah,
Yep. She's
yeah,
like, not again.
yeah.
Well,
So
thank you for sharing, a few of your experiences tonight. If you were listening or watching and you want more experiences from Dave, go grab his book. The link to his Amazon is in my description or in the description, so you can find him there. Do you have any appearances coming up, any conferences or any shows you want to mention before we end the broadcast?
no, I do podcast shows 2 3
Oh,
times a week, a lot of times, and I'm going to start on my fifth book right after this book. In the next few days, I publish it to a publisher, and then I'm going to start on another book. Not
well,
quite
make
sure
sure
what
to follow
direction.
him.
Yeah,
Follow him on Amazon. He's on Facebook. That way you can stay up to date with his podcast and his writing, because he seems to be cranking them out and has a lot of information and experience to share.
thank you.
Thank you so much, Dave. Hang out for a minute after I end the broadcast, and thank you to everybody that joined in the live chat or is watching later. Please leave your feedback, subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff, and make sure you go follow Dave and his work as well. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.